This is a video summarizing our report on looking at power and influence over stigma and discrimination. This is the fourth of four reports, and here we're trying to explain the stigma and discrimination that we described in earlier reports, especially our second report, Trapped. And we're doing that by looking at the power and influence there is over stigma and discrimination. A really important idea in this report is misrecognition. That's a term from social science and likely new to lots of people, but it's a really important idea for helping to understand stigma and discrimination. So the idea of misrecognition, in some ways it means a mistake, but it's a particular kind of mistake. So it's a mistaken belief that sees something as natural and this is the really important bit, that belief reflects a dominant group's values and ideas. So there's lots of examples we could give, but one which we think is quite helpful, this is one from the UK, is the belief that many people have living here that we live in a meritocracy. So the idea of a meritocracy being that any success and wealth that people have is down to their own talent and hard work. Lots of people believe that, whether they're successful or not. And that idea of a meritocracy is, of course, not the case. Talent and hard work might help some people, but a lot of success and wealth is down to luck and it's down to inequalities. But the belief in meritocracy is a really helpful idea for people who are wealthy and powerful. It justifies their position and the society that brought them wealth and power, however little deserved. So if we misrecognize something, it can be really influential. If we misrecognize the society we live in as a meritocracy, then it's another reason why inequalities carry on. And that idea is really important for the study. The first way is in how we argue that there is a misrecognition of stigma. So lots of people see stigma as something that's a problem, but that it's a problem of individuals and something to be fixed by fixing individuals. And we can see that often in the dominant policy debate on stigma. Agencies and governments often don't really even define stigma. It's just left as something vague and open. And that vague and open approach means the institutions and the inequalities involved don't get questioned. They're not in the limelight. We can also see this a little bit in how the idea of having lived experience roles has been taken on in the homelessness sector. Now, this is a really important idea, that people with current or past experience of homelessness should play a role in developing and delivering policy and services, and that can help address stigma. Now, lived experience roles can do all that, but again, the dominant policy debate is a bit more complicated, as the Groundswell-led project on lived experience roles showed us. What is meant by stigma and how it works isn't often fully thought through, and so the full potential for lived experience roles is limited. And the existing policy approaches stay largely as they are, when perhaps they need to really change. The misrecognition of stigma means that we also misrecognize homelessness. If we don't get our understanding of stigma right, then we certainly haven't got our understanding of homelessness right. Rather than seeing homelessness as bound up with stigma, discrimination, and inequalities, homelessness in the dominant policy debate is more often seen as either the individual's fault or something that can be solved by some simple or at least not too technically challenging policy steps. So solving homelessness being a technical thing rather than something that is deeply about power and inequalities. And we can see that in the dominant policy debate, in how specific ideas of evidence and research are very influential, and in doing so, act to block an in-depth analysis of stigma. So relatedly, how ideas of ending homelessness are often spoken about as if there's something that just requires a few more hostel places or a bit more research to bring about. The other side of this is in how we talk about homelessness, but we very rarely talk about housing. We aren't so much relating what is happening on the streets to a shortage of quality and affordable housing, and how that's come about from very specific policy decisions over the past 50 years. Policies on mortgage lending, policies to foster the role for private landlords, policies on home ownership. And here's where we get to something important, how the way in which we look at the problem acts to serve the interests of some people and not others. So there's, of course, a lot of complexity and struggle going on in there. This isn't just one single debate with everybody agreeing. And how the idea of housing first has taken hold is a great example of how understandings of homelessness can shift, even if not necessarily completely, but shift in ways that recognize stigma and recognize in certain ways the role for power and inequalities. So once we've done the research, again, we have this question, so what? With the 4 reports, we've developed an in-depth and precise understanding of what stigma and discrimination looks like and how it keeps going. But the reason for doing that is to do something about it. And for us, that is about developing new responses to stigma. If you want to know more about the responses that we're developing or have any feedback on the ideas here, please get in touch. Thank you for listening.